let's take a step back then. You mentioned the 2008 crisis. I'm not sure people are sure the impact that that had on journalism in the media, but it's almost the start of your journey into journalism, because you started technically in 2009. So tell us how you got into this, you personally, and what you were trying to do with technically.
I recently played a counterfactual because I left a plumber's apprenticeship to go finish Temple University, finish my undergrad. And so I leave that in maybe 2007 ish, and I go finish university, and I get a little fellowship after university, which is normally a very traditional path to like my prestigious journalism career. And it was very clear that I was a coyote running to the cliff, and there was nothing underneath me. Like, it was the end. That career pathway had already ended. Yeah. And I just kept running toward the brick wall. So I finished this fellowship, and I have almost literally no job prospects. It's a Great Recession, which affects so many industries and so many people, but there was a simultaneous model collapse in how we got professionally verified information, especially at a local level. And so I went back to that plumber who I had an apprenticeship with, and I said, "Hey, how about that apprenticeship opening?" And he's like, "Bud, like, I can barely get work in this moment. You don't have a chance." And he actually later leaves the building trades, which actually mirrors the whole like collapse of housing that we've had. That in that moment, I was like inside that of like the building trades were collapsing. So then I couldn't even go back to the plumber's apprenticeship. I was like, I guess I'm doing the journalism thing. And a similarly desperately unemployed friend and I, two friends and I, start what became technically, out of desperation, a kind of life raft in the stormy seas.
Yeah. So part of technically is working with innovators, entrepreneurs, technologists. How common do you think that story is, where people will go? I mean, I think there's two stories. There's the entrepreneur where it's deliberate decision making, and then there's the entrepreneur out of necessity. You see it all. How common do you think that is as journeys, and where was it different for you?
Well, and the economics literature explicitly calls it necessity entrepreneur. So like, there's now a distinction that we would have been categorized as a necessity entrepreneur. And there are two kinds. In the American system, some of our self-employment is a do-it-yourself welfare state. Like we've kind of left people to like, guess you better piece it together. And so that is a version of what our entrepreneurship is. That is some of our gig workers, that's some of our consulting practice, that's some just piecing it together. It's a very dire place. A thing that has changed in the last 5 years, very much a post-pandemic story, is rates of business incorporation have skyrocketed. So we were in a 30-year terminal decline in rates of entrepreneurship, business incorporation. Yep. The number of Americans starting a new thing from 1970s to the eve of the pandemic was basically one chart going down, 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 with some dips around recessions getting worse. It pops in the pandemic era. Business starts surge. Initially, when we technically were doing this reporting and I was speaking to economists, initially there was a sense of like, this just must be all people trying to scam Paycheck Protection Program or whatever pandemic response. It must just be that, because we have no idea what's happening. We're 5 years in, and business rates are still much higher than they were before. On the eve of the pandemic, there's a congressional hearing where an analyst we speak to pretty frequently told a subcommittee in Congress, millennials are on track to be the least entrepreneurial generation in American history. Doesn't matter if you were watching Shark Tank on ABC, we were starting a few businesses, and it all changed.